So we'll begin with opening remarks with Ms. Ellis.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be a part of this event tonight. I am Lisa Ellis. I am currently in my 25th year of teaching in South Carolina public schools, and I can tell you from an honest point of view, each year gets harder and harder. I've spent time in 3 school districts. Most of my time has been in Richland School District 2 in the Midlands. I spent 2 years in Fairfield County School District, and then a year in Richland 1 at Hand Middle School. I've been back at Blythewood High School for, this is now 3 plus 5, 8 years. I went back as a journalism, media broadcast, media production teacher for 3 years. And for the last 5 years, I've been serving as the director of student activities at Blythewood High School. And that's where I work directly with students to create school-wide events that foster community and build school culture. It's something that I'm very passionate about. I tell my students that we're actually working on skills that they'll use regardless of what they do in their lifetime. And so it's really meaningful to me. We've got the countdown outside my classroom on the bulletin board says 12 school days left. And I'm counting them down. It's been a year. In 2018, I was looking for an exit strategy out of teaching and went back and got a second master's degree in organizational leadership from Columbia College because I was tired and burned out and all of that. I created a closed Facebook community group for teachers, which quickly ballooned into a group that now currently has 34,000 members. And what we realized as we were working through that we were all dealing with the same issues regardless of where we were based on zip code. And so that community turned into a grassroots advocacy movement to push for better salaries and working conditions for teachers. We've been in a teacher shortage for, honestly, a decade. If you want to think about it, I came in as an alternative certification under critical needs, and that's 25 years ago. So we've been dealing with this teacher shortage for a long time, and we realized the teacher voice wasn't being heard where it needed to be heard. Instead of leaving the profession, I sort of doubled down because I felt that I could make a difference in helping our students by helping our teachers. In 2022, I ran for superintendent of education and lost to Ellen Weaver in the general election, but I was the highest vote getter for the Democrats for all statewide candidates in South Carolina. So I'm really proud of that campaign that we ran. Since then, like I said, I've been back in the classroom, back in the school, and I've seen the negative impact that policies continue to have on our students and our teachers. And so I've stepped back up to run again. I know that I can make a difference at the superintendent level, and I look forward to that challenge.
Thank you for your response. Ms. Wright.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for attending this tonight, and thank you for organizing this event. So my name is Sylvia Wright, and I am your candidate for State Superintendent of Education. I've been in education for over 20 years. I've worked on every single level. I've been a classroom teacher, department leader, instructional coach, school coordinator, and district coordinator. I actually resigned from my district coordinator position to run full-time for state superintendent because that's how dedicated I am to improving education here in South Carolina. I'm also currently working on my Doctor of Education at the University of South Carolina in systems improvement and innovation because that's what I want to bring to the systems here in South Carolina. We rank 43rd in education, and we've been in the bottom 10 for the past 2 decades. So there's a lot of work to be done in education. But there are 3 top priorities that I'm going to implement the minute that I become this next state superintendent of education. The first one is expanding early childhood education, that access. Right now, 4-year-old pre-K, it's income-based. So if you don't qualify for income-based, then you have to pay for private preschool. So that leaves a big gap in the middle of students who do not have access to early childhood education. So I want to implement universal pre-K for our 4-year-olds. Next is school safety. And when I talk about school safety, I'm not talking about just intruders. I'm talking about buildings with mold, buildings that when it rains, the kids have to be rerouted to the other side of the building, which disrupts learning. I'm talking about bullying, student misbehavior. All of these things are school safety. So I want to convene a school safety advisory council, and from the results, use that to create policies to make our schools safer. And then last but not least, again, these are the top three things. There's a lot of work to be done, but the final top priority, immediate top priority, is improving or increasing our teacher pipeline, strengthening our teacher pipeline. And I plan to do that by partnering with our universities and our technical schools. In exchange for 5 years of teaching, we will pay for their tuition. So that way they don't have to worry about student loans. On top of this, $60,000 starting salary. And the current legislators or the current legislators are working in this direction to improve or increase teacher pay. So I will just continue to work with them. So again, I know we're going to dive more into those top three things that I just mentioned, but thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's get into our first question for tonight. Ms. Wright, you'll be answering this question first. Teacher contracts and educator retention remain ongoing concerns across South Carolina. What specific changes or reforms would you support to improve annual educator contracts, strengthen job stability, and better support teacher recruitment and retention?
All right. So three-part question. The first one was, say that again for me, because this is a loaded question.
Yes, the first part, what specific changes or reforms would you support to improve annual educator contracts?
You had two other things too. What's the other one?
Strengthen job stability and better support teacher recruitment.
Okay, and then teacher recruitment. Okay, so for the first one, teacher recruitment, I'll start there. Because with teacher recruitment, it's one thing to recruit teachers, but we also have to retain teachers. So as far as recruitment, increasing the pay, like I mentioned. As far as recruitment in our rural areas, for example, there's a rural recruitment initiative for our teachers. And right now, where the money is going, for example, $2 million of that went to international teachers, and only $31,500 went to new teachers. So I mention that because we have the money to provide like incentives for our teachers, to provide pay, to provide stipends, to attract teachers to our rural areas, for example. So again, providing initiative or incentives to attract teachers, but again, we have to retain them, and retaining them would be improving the working conditions. And some of the things that I mentioned with school safety, like student misbehavior, would be an example of that. Job stability, again, that would go to working conditions for our teachers, improving working conditions. Again, student misbehavior, the paperwork, testing, all these things. Especially for me, I want to get rid of statewide testing. The model that I want to use is a growth model, where the students test at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and the end of the year. And we look at growth. And the reason why I highlight this for job stability is right now, a lot of teachers are leaving because of this testing culture that we have in our schools right now. They feel the pressure to just teach to the test. And they feel like students aren't learning. So if we change this model where we're actually putting the students in control of their learning, the teachers are more facilitators helping the students grow, then, that will change from that competitive culture to more collaborative culture. And changing the culture, the vibe of education will help with job stability. And then annual contracts. One of the biggest issues, for example, that's happening right now in Berkeley County, they're talking about a pay raise or maybe not pay raise, but the teachers don't know. But yet they're supposed to sign their contracts before the board even agrees to giving them a pay raise. So they can say, oh, we're going to do this pay raise, but or not do the pay raise, but then the teacher's already stuck in their contracts. So making sure that we have set deadlines, set expectations for contracts for our teachers.
Thank you for your response. Ms. Ellis, would you like for me to repeat the question?
That would be great. Thank you.
No problem. Teacher contracts and educator retention remain ongoing concerns across South Carolina. What specific changes or reforms would you support to improve annual educator contracts, strengthen job stability, and better support teacher recruitment and retention?
Thank you. So I'll address the teacher contracts really quickly. That was something that I tried to push with SC for Ed, and we finally got legislative movement on it last year. Prior to this past legislative environment, teachers had to sign their contracts and return them by the 10th, so by Monday or by the 11th, without knowing where they were going to be located, what their salary was going to be, and what their other duties is assigned. And we talked about the fact that no other profession expects you to sign a contract looking like that. So the contract that I just received for the 26-27 school year had a tentative assignment of Blythewood High School, which is where I'm currently at, what my job is, and what Richland 2 did was, here's the proposed teacher salary that we'll have for the 26-27 school year. Now, the problem with that is they are waiting on the state legislature to pass the budget, which doesn't have to be done and is usually done around July 1. And so you're working in a system that does not back up to, the needs of school districts and teachers. I will say this, while there's that movement, we can always improve on it. The fact that teachers have to sign contracts so early before any of that is done is something that we need to really look at. And we also need to have the opportunity for teachers to get out of their contracts. Last year I dealt with the experience of signing my contract and then finding out my principal was being moved. And so, to me, that's unacceptable. So that's what, continue that movement on contracts. In terms of retaining and recruiting teachers, we have plenty of certified teachers in South Carolina. They're just not willing to work for the salary and under the working conditions. Those are the two things that teachers talk about all the time, is the salary's too low and the working conditions are too much. As the superintendent of education, I can work on those working conditions really immediately and would continue to work with the legislature to increase the salary, but also figure out a way to create a more equitable salary schedule across the state so that certain districts that don't necessarily have the local tax base, maybe the state can supplement their teacher salary schedules. But the working conditions, things like our evaluative process continues to be punitive and just hoops to jump through. Benchmark testing, PLCs and SLOs and all of these things that take teachers away from what they really need to be doing, and that's focusing on their students, is where the Department of Ed can really make those changes quickly. And then I believe teachers will start coming back into the classroom because it's a more sustainable profession.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. I'll read the next question. Ms. Ellis, we'll start with you. Some community members have expressed concerns regarding partnerships between school districts and politically affiliated organizations, including efforts to establish chapters in public schools. If elected, how would you ensure schools remain spaces where diverse perspectives are respected and students are encouraged to engage in open, balanced, and inclusive civic dialogue?
Thank you. That's a great question. And I would say, first and foremost, even though this is an elected position, there's no room for politics in the role. And I think what we've seen with this last superintendent of education is those politics have directly come into the Department of Ed and are now being filtered down through districts and schools. And really, it depends on what district you're in, how much schools and students and teachers are being protected. I will say this, I'm just going to throw the skunk on the table, as my principal likes to say. The latest thing has been the Turning Point USA. And again, from my personal experience, when I started taking over student activities 5 years ago, I got an email from that organization about starting a student chapter at Blythewood High School. And we already have policies in place for student groups to be created. And that system works really well. But I looked at this and on the outside, I was like, oh, civic minded, this looks great. Let me spend some more time on it. And when I did a deeper dive, I very much saw what the underlying message was. And so that was something that I said, this is This is not going to come into our school. And so, that Turning Point USA has been on my radar for 5 years. It is absolutely inappropriate for the superintendent and the governor to push that. We could talk about the same thing with PragerU. We could talk about, removing the school librarians partnership. All of that is under the same guise. But if we're really being honest about what that is, it's about dismantling public schools, creating mistrust in public schools so money can be, filtered into private and for-profit charters. And so at the end of the day, my role is to help schools and school districts be successful, but those decisions need to be made on the local level and what is in the best interest of their student population, and what makes that student population work. And the beautiful thing about public school is that it is so diverse, and that's what we need to create a society that is respectful and works together for each other.
Thank you for your answer, Ms. Ellis. Ms. Wright, would you like the question repeated?
Yes, please.
Some community members have expressed concerns regarding partnerships between school districts and politically affiliated organizations, including efforts to establish chapters in public schools. If elected, how would you ensure schools remain spaces where diverse perspectives are respected and students are encouraged to engage in open, balanced, and inclusive civic dialogue?
All right. So again, my stance on political affiliated clubs, public schools are a neutral zone. And so when you start pushing political agendas like PragerU and Club America, this disrupts that neutrality, and it causes divisiveness within our public schools. And it takes away the focus of students growing and learning, because that is the goal for education. Our job is to grow students and prepare them for the future. And that's going to be my focus as state superintendent of education. And as far as making sure that we preserve this space and acknowledge and respect diversity, before I go any further there, I want to make sure that, just reaffirm that this is the current superintendent's agenda. She's with the Project 2025 agenda, this Trump agenda. She even made the word diversity, you can't use that at the State Department. There's a whole list of words. She sent out a memo. So just this restricting diversity is part of her plan, her agenda. But as state superintendent of education, that's not part of mine. I want to make sure we appreciate diversity. And I do that by implementing statewide programs and initiatives. You know how you have the different contests for recycling, or maybe different contests for the calendars, how they do the pictures for calendars. Well, I want to have different contests where the students get involved with diversity, initiatives like that. That way it's they see at the state level that I am pushing diversity, the importance of diversity, how it brings us all together, and then setting that example at the state level so it can trickle down to the local level. So instead of pushing diversity to the side like the current superintendent, I want to show how much we should, implement diversity, appreciate each other's diversity throughout the state.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Our next question will be directed, I'm sorry, Ms. Wright. Thank you. Our next question will be directed right back at you, Ms. Wright.
Mm-hmm.
Families, well, let me preface by saying this is coming from a community member. It was submitted in, so not I. But families in Berkeley County School District have repeatedly raised concerns regarding staffing decisions, lack of transparency, and reductions in critical student support positions. Yet many feel their concerns have gone unanswered by district leadership. As state superintendent, what steps would you take to ensure school districts operate transparently, respond meaningfully to public concerns, and remain accountable to students, families, and educators?
Okay, so one of the things I want to highlight is last year, Act 28 or S77 was passed, which required school boards to record their school board meetings, right? They had to be live streamed. And the state board set a model policy for school districts to create their policies. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is because I wanted to prove that the State Department or State Board of Education and our General Assembly, they do have some power over school boards. Because as I've traveled around the state, because I've gone to all 46 counties, talked to parents, school board members, teachers, district people, like all stakeholders. Right now, school boards are operating as if there's no oversight, and really there's supposed to be oversight on our school boards. But I want to highlight that there is this General Assembly and our state board, they have power over that, over school boards. And also to illustrate how I will work with the General Assembly, I will work with the State Board of Education and create policies that set a baseline standard. And with 3 T's: transparency, treatment, transparency, and track record. Treatment. In Berkeley County, I don't know who all here is from Berkeley County, but J.K. Gordine, that elementary school closed without any parents knowing, the principal didn't even know that school was going to close. So not only that, at school board meetings, when teachers are talking or parents are talking, school board members are on their phones. So when I talk about creating policies, like a baseline policy, it includes treatment, how we treat people. And we shouldn't have to write this in policy, but clearly we do. Next will be transparency. Like I said, with J.K. Gordine closing, with them restricting or removing discus, access to discus, like decisions are being made without anyone knowing why. And so making sure that things like that don't happen by creating policies that enforce this transparency. Again, baseline expectations. And again, track record. What's working and what's not working. Being clear and upfront about that. So parents, all stakeholders, parents, teachers, the admin, everyone, we elect the school board members. And so they have a responsibility to letting us know what's happening and what's going on. That's our right as because they're elected, and it's our right to know. So
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Ms. Ellis, families in Berkeley County School District have repeatedly raised concerns regarding staffing decisions, lack of transparency, and reductions in critical student support positions. Yet many feel their concerns have gone unanswered by district leadership. As state superintendent, what steps would you take to ensure school districts operate transparently, respond meaningfully to public concerns, and remain accountable to students, families, and educators?
It's a great question, and I think that there's a couple ways that it has to be addressed. First and foremost, one of the things that I think we have gotten sort of, and I'm just going to again throw the skunk on the table because it's May and I'm tired. I think one of the things that we have gotten really complacent about is just assuming leadership is going to do what we say without having an active role in telling them what we want, right? So I feel like I'm living the definition of insanity in South Carolina because people complain about all the decisions that are being made, and yet they vote for the same people over and over again, right? We as individuals have the power, but we have got to step up and use it. So one of the things that really burns my butt about Berkeley County is that the whole banning books for, Berkeley County is the one with the most banned books in the school district. And that started because of one single human in that district without kids. And because they were the loudest person and people just sat and let it happen, that's where we are. And so it's had to go up to the state level. So first and foremost, I would say if you don't like your district leadership, you can change it. We're in an election year. You've got to start talking to your communities and making them understand why this is important and getting them out to vote. Because when we talk about elections, people are always so concerned about the presidential one. And I mean, we're living in a dumpster fire because of that one. So there's truth there. But the local level of elections affect us much more closely. And we've got to be more vocal about those elections and showing up and turning out. Recently, I was in Berkeley County at Westview Middle School and they were talking about Some of the teachers were talking about the fact that they're concerned about speaking out because of retribution. Again, that's something we're hearing coming out of Berkeley County. At the state level, when you talk about the fact that there is some power over school boards, there is, but the General Assembly as well is the Department of Ed has focused just on rural minority school districts where they've been busy consolidating part of Florence. They've consolidated Clarendon County, and yet they're leaving other school districts alone. Again, politically driven, right? They want to take care of their base. And so we've got to sit there and make sure that our school districts are doing what they need to be doing. And that's coming in, that's the superintendent of education coming into the school district and, making those expectations known and then following through with it and making sure that the legislature is following through with it. But the quickest and easy way to do it is vote in a different board.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. All right, this next question is coming right back to you, Ms. Ellis. As an educator, I have observed students being disciplined for disruptive behaviors without adequate consideration of adverse childhood experiences and trauma-informed care. Rather than relying primarily on punitive discipline measures, what strategies would you implement to address disruptive behavior while supporting students' social, emotional, and mental health needs?
Student discipline is one of the big reasons why teachers continue to leave. And school discipline really is dependent on school level administration and, of course, district level administration. But all of it stems up towards how the school report card is measured. And so when you look at one of the measures of the school report card is, suspensions and recommendations for expulsion. It creates this web of not wanting to reflect poorly on the school and the district because the way we measure the school report card is not great for schools. Again, something I've been talking about for years. So we'll just set that aside because that drives a lot of decisions that are being made that are not in the best interest of students and teachers right now. One of the things that I think we falsely believe is that there's a one size fits all for student discipline. Either it needs to be punitive or it needs to be restorative justice or it needs to be, some of SEL, some other sort of buzzword. The reality of it is all students are different. All students come from different backgrounds, from different experiences, and we've got to be willing to do what is in the best interest of that student and that teacher and that school. And that really, honestly, is a combination of all three. You can't just sit there and say, oh, it's this, and so we're going to do, this. You've got to come at it from all of the different angles to make sure, because the ultimate goal is to have that student be successful in school and ultimately in society, right? We just had, again, personal experiences. We just had a student try to bring a loaded gun to school at Blythewood High School on Monday. Fortunately, we're a great community. The students saw it on the bus, called 911. The student was immediately taken into custody. You find out that he's a 18-year-old ninth grader. So the system has failed him, and the system has failed him for multiple years. We should have caught that kid earlier. But when you look at all of the things, you look at a teacher shortage, you look at the fact that classrooms haven't had a consistent teacher for multiple years. All of those things go into addressing student discipline. So we've got to work at it from all different levels. We've got to make sure that our school building staff is developed in trauma-informed practices. And, it used to be, I don't know if it still is, but ACEs, that came out about 7 or 8 years ago. But we've got to make sure that we've got a high-quality teacher in every school, and we've got all of the access to helping that student be successful. At the end of the day, though, if a student is disruptive in a class, that student has to be removed because now you're infringing on the rest of the students in the class. So we've got to start looking at how we handle not only the student who's being the disruptive, but also making sure we're protecting the learning time for the other students. So ultimately, it's looking at it and taking it in a bunch of different directions and making sure that we're using all of the resources we've got available to help those students be successful and the schools be successful.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Right.
Right.
Ms. Wright.
Yes, sir.
As an educator, I have observed students being disciplined for disruptive behaviors without adequate consideration of adverse childhood experiences and trauma-informed care. Rather than relying primarily on punitive discipline measures, what strategies would you implement to address disruptive behavior while supporting students' social, emotional, and mental health needs?
All right. So the key thing is to remember that all behavior is motivated by something, whether it's good behavior or bad behavior. And I remember there was this one student who he was that student where the teachers would check their roster to make sure that he wasn't on their roster, like in the summertime. But I had a conversation with this student, and his dad was murdered, and his mom would not let him go to the funeral. And so when you talked about a student dealing with adverse childhood experience, he's an example of that. And so instead of, just constantly kicking him out of the classroom, there needs to be something in place that offers like counseling for him to get to the bottom of like that anger that he's dealing with, because he didn't care about school. He's angry. He has this anger towards his mom, anger towards school isn't on his mind is the point. And so providing services for students like that can help them address those issues that they're dealing with, and also support them academically. And one way I plan to do that, one strategy is like a statewide progress discipline plan. And Charleston County has something like this, like a progressive discipline model. And with that, it lists expectations. And again, this would be like a model. So you have districts, like I said, Charleston County is already doing something like this, but not every district is. So I want to get us more aligned to implementing this practice statewide. And so it would list expectations for behavior, and then also preventive measures and interventions. So a kid like that, instead of just automatic, suspension, there's some preventative measures and interventions like mentoring, assigning him a mental health therapist, family counseling, providing those services, and then restorative practices. What are some prevention and intervention things that we can do, right? And then the third step would be, of course, what actions to take after that. And that would involve like your MTSS process, for like your tier 3 MTSS process. So that's sort of my strategy. Well, one of the strategies that I would like to see statewide is a more structured discipline policy that, takes into account students who have, like you said, the trauma, that are dealing with this adverse childhood experience, and other things as well, other issues that are, preventing them from learning or motivating that bad behavior.
Thank you, Ms. Wright.
Mhm.
And our next question will go right back to you.
Yeah.
In what specific ways would you work to protect and strengthen the civil rights of all South Carolinians within the public education system, particularly for historically marginalized students and communities?
Okay. So when we talk about civil rights, that's like equitable learning experiences. And I've worked in the rural area, so I know that there is that these rural areas and these underrepresented areas have been neglected. Their civil rights have been neglected. So my plan to secure and strengthen civil rights in South Carolina, number one, expand access to early childhood education. And for our rural areas, it wouldn't just be, the universal pre-K is going to be all over South Carolina, but also additional, like, I don't know if you've heard of Miss Ruby's Kids, but with Miss Ruby's Kids, it works with parents from birth to, there's three different things, birth to 5. And then they also, once the kid starts, is school age, this person continues to work with the student and the parent. And that way it keeps the parent involved, and it provides a mentor for the student. And as the student moves up, if they feel like they still need that service, then they continue. If they feel like they don't, then they don't have the service anymore. But I say that because that would be in addition to the universal pre-K that I spoke about, but just expanding access to programs like that, especially in our rural and underserved areas. Also providing oversight, progress monitoring for these areas that have been neglected. I know I went to the state board meeting, and I remember the school board members from Jasper County were saying how they tried to talk to the current superintendent and let her know, like, hey, we want a forensic audit of what's happening in our county, where this money is going, because Jasper County, along with several other counties, they're dealing with issues of embezzlement, issues of mismanagement of money. And all this is happening because this lack of oversight. And because of this lack of oversight, again, all this money is being mismanaged, but the kids are suffering because of it. There's programs that could be implemented, extra services that can be provided with proper oversight. So providing the oversight that is necessary, that should be in place, but it's not, because again, the focus for this current superintendent is not, it's on a different agenda. And then also conversations with stakeholders, having town hall meetings. Like I said, I've been in all 46 counties. I've been holding town hall meetings, listening to the people in the community, listening to teachers, the students, the families, finding out what are the needs, what is happening in the communities. Because as state superintendent of education, it's my job to know what is happening in our schools, in the communities, and then report back to our elected officials and have those conversations with how we can support our school districts, how we can support our teachers, our schools, our students, and families working together, because it's going to take all of us working together to elevate public education here in South Carolina. But expanding early childhood education, oversight, and just having conversations would be how I would strengthen, to begin to strengthen civil rights in South Carolina.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Ms. Ellis, in what specific ways would you work to protect and strengthen the civil rights of all South Carolinians within the public education system, particularly for historically marginalized students and communities?
I think that when you talk about that, you've got to talk about, again, teacher recruitment and retention and funding. As a school teacher, I'm a mandatory reporter, right? And so if I'm in a classroom with my students and I start seeing that students need help in some way, I'm there to make sure that they get that help, depending on what it is. And so that's my responsibility as a school teacher. But when we have classrooms without teachers, when we have long-term subs, when we have teachers who are from the international community and aren't necessarily aware of those expectations, then that's when you start to see students fall through the cracks. And so we've really got to work to get teachers back into the classroom. We've got to make sure that the funding piece is also there. Schools in South Carolina have been underfunded since 2008. And the first things that go when you're lacking funding are what we call those wraparound services, right? So we talk about the fact that over 50% of our students in K through 12 are either living in poverty or at a high financial risk to become poverty. We know that students can't focus when they're hungry, right? But some of those things like school meals are the first to get cut out of the budget because they've got to make up that difference somewhere else. So we've really got to start doing, the superintendent really has to start doing one thing. And again, that's building those relationships back or continuing those relationships with the legislature to make sure that they're focused on doing what is best for our public schools. But also we need to start reevaluating where the funding that we're receiving is going to, and is it going to, to help that kid. So when we talk about that, we're still following the same model. A lot of the funding is still the way we've done it 30, 40, 50 years ago, and that's no longer effective in schools in 2026. And so we've really got to take a look at where that money is going and how we can get it back to where it needs to go to meet the needs of our students in terms of their civil rights. And that probably is going to look different across the state because you've got such, vast different populations depending on where you're located. I've always believed that a student's access to education and opportunity shouldn't be limited by their zip code. But I think the reality right now is that's very much the case. And so we've got to work to start making decisions that allow our schools to run more equitably and not necessarily equal. So we're meeting the needs of the students regardless of where they live. And that ultimately is funding and recruitment and retention of teachers to make sure they're seeing with their eyes what is happening to the children and making sure they're taking the steps to help those children.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis, and thanks to both candidates for tonight's discussion. We will now proceed to closing remarks. Each candidate will have 3 minutes. We'll start with Ms. Ellis.
Oh, you don't want to start with Ms. Wright since I went first the first time?
I'm sorry, we can start with Ms. Wright.
I'm fine with that. So again, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I really enjoyed the questions tonight because it gets to the heart and the root of the big issues that are happening here in South Carolina. And again, for me, I am the most qualified candidate for this position because I've worked on every single level. I've been a district coordinator, like I said, school coordinator, instructional coach, department leader. And one of the biggest questions that I get is what prepares you or what qualifies you to be superintendent of education? And it's 3 things: leadership, management, and judgment. Leadership, building capacity, building relationships with others. Management, managing funding, budgets, programs, and initiatives. And then judgment, looking at the data and not just testing data, but data that comes from talking to the teachers, the administration, the parents, the students, finding out what those needs are, and then providing the support and resources. I've done all this on every level that I've worked on. So I have this experience. I've also trained to be a superintendent. I graduated from the Citadel with my specialist in education, specifically for superintendent. And I'm also a grandma. My grandson will be entering into public schools in the next 2 years. So I am personally committed and dedicated to improving education here in South Carolina. And so please join Team Wright. Visit my website at wright2026sc.com. I need volunteers. I need donations. But most importantly, I need your vote on June 9th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. And now, Ms. Ellis, your closing remarks.
Absolutely. I have spent my adult career working and fighting for our students in South Carolina. I am still fighting for them today and working with them and helping them become the great, amazing citizens that I know that they will be. And it has given me such pride and joy to see them go off and succeed and become great. And the fact that is very meaningful to me, the fact that I just received a college graduation card from a student who's graduating from college. And it's those relationships that mean the most to me. And honestly, I'm going to miss when I win this election is working with my students. But working for 25 years in the South Carolina public school system, I've seen the issues. And since 2018, as I stated earlier, I have fought this system to try and make things better. And, people don't want to listen to me because I'm in a classroom and they don't think I know what I'm talking about when I exactly know what I'm talking about because I'm seeing the impact that decisions are being made. So I know that I can make a difference at the superintendent of education level, and I can make a difference for all of the students in South Carolina because I've been the recipient of the policies. I've seen what we are doing that is not in the best interest of students. I've seen some of my greatest colleagues and best friends leave the profession because they can't handle it or can't handle the expectations anymore. And I want to change that. And I believe that I can. I know what needs to be done. And I will fight every day for our students at that role and making sure that I'm leaving the South Carolina public education system in a much better place than when I received it. So any help you could offer me, ellisforsc.com is the website. I'm happy to get your volunteer hours, your donations. But I really know that I can make a difference. I have the experience and I have the drive to do what it takes And every question that I answer will always, or every question answer will always be framed as how is this in the best interest of the students of South Carolina? So thank you so much for the opportunity tonight. It's been delightful.
All right, once again, thank you again to both candidates, Ms. Ellis and Ms. Wright, for sharing perspectives, your experiences, and your vision for the future of the education in South Carolina. I wanted to get straight into it, so I didn't really introduce myself. My name is Kendrick Brown. I am a 7th-year teacher here in North Charleston at Morningside Middle School. And I just want to say these experiences and conversations tonight matter deeply to us educators. I want to sincerely thank the audience, everyone for participating. Your willingness to show up and listen and invest time in our kids' future reflects how deeply people across the state care about education. Creating a culture that truly prioritizes the success of the ones that's coming after us, educators, families, community leaders, and engaged citizens working together. I think ultimately we all can agree that that's the dream. And now Craig will take it away.
All right. Let's give it up for Kendrick. Let's give it up for Miss Ellis and also Miss Wright. Thank y'all again for joining us. This is exactly just what we need, right? Being able to bring conversations and information to citizens in South Carolina. And with that, I want to make sure I leave us where we started, right? Again, Letitia shared some very important information, along with all the important information that you received this evening from the candidates. But tomorrow we are calling on an action to pack the room. There is a redistricting hearing Friday, May 8th. 9 a.m. It is going to be in room 110 of the Black Building. Okay. And so you can write a testimony and you can send that testimony in. And ultimately, our goal is to make sure that our legislators hear us loud and clear here in South Carolina. And so Letitia dropped, again, thank you, Letitia, dropped in the file for your testimony template. Also, the email address is there below too as well. And so we'll be sure to send this information out too as well as we wrap up tonight. Last thing, again, thank y'all for being here. Continue to stay involved, continue to stay connected. We have these monthly calls. So attend one of our monthly onboarding sessions, follow both of us on our social media platforms, and sign up. Catherine dropped both emails in the chat too as well. So with that being said, you all, we are right on spot, right on time. We want to end this just the way we started. So we're going to jam on the way out of here, just like we jam coming in. So thank y'all so much. Thank you, candidates, and best of luck to you both.